Hello and welcome to the channel and welcome to another video as part of my series on DCS World and trying to learn to fly the basics. And we're back in the beautiful aircraft, which is a training aircraft, the MB399. Now initially, if you jump in this plane, you may look at all these dials, switches and buttons and think, this is too much. Well, believe you me, I'm in the same hot seat as you. Looking at a lot of things on here, it's like, what on earth is all this? How am I supposed to learn and understand this? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of what I've learned in my journey in DCS. And this aircraft is the perfect training aircraft. As you know from the previous video, there is a trainer seat behind us. So the first thing we're going to do is put the main battery on. That is going to light up underneath the alert switches telling us what's on and what isn't on. This will start to increase the jet pipe temperature indicator and also the attitude director indicator, which is the ADI, which is the main console right in front of us. Next, we're going to switch the engine master switch on. Now this connects all the electrical power to the engine circuits and to the booster pump, which we will need to start driving fuel into the engines before we start them. From there, we hold down the start button for around 3 to 4 seconds, and these processors and dials will start to move eventually. You must take the engine from stop into idle within around 20 seconds, otherwise the system will go into reset. Now the altimeter is not actually showing 0 as we are probably above sea level. I don't know as an inexperienced pilot or trainee whether I should be resetting this to 0 or whether that should have been left once you've got the information about the actual airport you're at. So if you do know, please do leave that in the comments box below. Next up, we will set on the generators 1 and then 2 and make sure that they are stabilized. And over on the left, we'll put the anti-skid on while we're taxiing. One of the things I actually missed up at the top was the jet limiter, which actually stops the engine and the jet overheating when you're at standstill for a long time. So we must remember to flick that on when you're going through these procedures and then turn them off. Next, I'm turning the master smoke on. Yes, this craft can have smoke for displays. It also gives you a great view and something to show off with. So we've got those basic on now. We're going to close the canopy. So now the canopy's closed, we're going to come down and have a look at the instrument lighting panel. Now a lot of this is not actually functional in the mod currently, but we're going to turn on the beacon light, or the beacon light, which we should be able to see from the outside. The flashing lights somewhere out here. We also have the form lights knob. Now this turns the brightness up and down for the formation lights if you're flying in a formation, of course. There's also a switch for console and flood. Console turns on the control panel lights and adjusts the brightness, and the flood light, that turns on the cockpit lights and controls their brightness. Many of the other buttons on the right, such as the radio and things like that, I'm not quite adverse or have learned any of those functions yet, and many of them don't actually work in the mod. So over on the left now, we're going to be putting flaps into position 1, and we're going to be removing the air brake from underneath the aircraft, which you will see as we pull out of the hangar here. We're actually going to put the master arm on, which is what we have to do for firing of the smoke or the weapon systems. And you would set this for sequential and repeat. I think that means single fire or ripple fire. You would fire them all at once. I may be wrong there, and you have to arm each individual pod here by turning it into green, and that is the actual weapon that you will be firing once the master system is switched on. So now the craft is in a good position for us to get out and taxi. So I'm just going to put my helmet on. And we're going to be releasing the parking brake now, and we're going to be putting the power of the throttle up to around 50% RPM on the clock dial there. And we're going to move out now, out onto the taxiway and move our way out onto the runway. At the beginning of this video I mentioned that it was criminal, and what you're about to find out later in this video is that as a new flyer, not everything makes sense when you're in the cockpit. Things you don't realise, and you have to learn the hard way. You will see in this video, and I pray to the gods out there, the gods of DCS and everything that flies above the ground earth, for forgiveness, but we'll get to that as we taxi our way down here at around 50 RPM. Really, we probably should be going slower, but again, this is an empty field and I'm not in full simulation mode just quite yet. We've still got a long way to go. I also won't be connecting to ATC and asking for permission to take off. I would like to thank the DCS community for reaching out to me, and I've had many people saying if they would like to get into the cockpit here with me and teach me a few things, so I do appreciate that. So what I've learned so far is now we need to check the systems, the flaps and the brakes, make sure the air brake is up. I've got the parking brake on now, which you probably shouldn't do, but while I'm checking the actual cockpit here, that's what I'm doing. And we're going to be putting on the foot brake, and we're going to be putting the power straight up to 100. Once that afterburner kicks in, we will be letting go and blasting down the runway, and hopefully we can keep this thing straight. As we get over around 50 kilometers an hour, I will be taking off the wheel brake steering and just using the rudder, because that's when it becomes more effective, or so I believe. So let's get this bird up and in the air. Just making sure that we've actually set trim here as well to 0. She's a feisty old bird. I'm really struggling to keep this straight and on the line here. The second DCS replay will show me running off the runway, but that is incorrect. We will be taking the flaps up now and also retracting the gear. We need to get that up before we reach 150 knots so as we don't damage it. We must make sure when we take off from the runway that we don't turn before we get to 500 feet. So in our flight today, in our learning process, as we fly up here into the clouds in this beautiful area of Syria, I'm going to be trying to be coming in and doing a landing maneuver. Now, I am fairly new at this, and from gathering information from the manual and from other more experienced pilots, I created a diagram which I will put on screen in a second, and this will explain the process of coming around, getting yourself into the flight path and the landing path. But as I mentioned, we make a rather nasty mistake. Dials that I need to learn are in the center column, are the altitude director. I don't really know what the yellow line is used for in that centerpiece. And also the HSI, which is the button below. Now, I've been kind of cheating and using this and setting it to north when I'm on the runway, so that when I do a little fly around, I know how to get myself lined up. If any of you have got any advice on how to use that piece of equipment properly, the manual is available for this aircraft, but it seems to feel as though you've got to have a general understanding of what it is anyway. I understood that the centre bar there would move to the middle once you'd set your flight path. So again, these are all things that I need to learn, and if you've got any advice on that, please do let me know. From looking at the diagram on the left that I have created, we are around section 2. So we will be putting one section of flaps down and trying to reduce our speed round to around 140 knots. On screen now, and you can see the replay from the second DCS replay, which is completely wrong. So I want to try and get my speed down to around 140 now. So as we dive down, I've got the air brake on, and I will be putting one set of flaps on to try and reduce that speed. as we do put the air brake on and the set of first flaps, the RPM on the engine will drop, so you need to increase that. Around 70 to 80 currently I've got that, in order to maintain that speed of 140 knots. As we start to make our left turning here, our left bank at section 3, we're going to be putting more trim down should we need it, and we will also be bringing the gears down, and the air brake, we will be taking that off as we move round towards section 4. Again, at this stage it's all a matter of trim. I'm way too low here. We want to be around 1,000 feet, so we need to increase the power here on the RPM and get a little bit more height before we move round to the end section, which will be number 5 on our direct approach onto the landing pad. If you haven't guessed it already, the biggest mistake that we make in this flight here, and what makes this criminal, is that we land on the runway in the wrong direction. Yes, as we make our way around on this last pass of section 5 on the left, there's aircraft taking off while we're trying to land on the runway. Now, as a new flyer, I don't understand how you know which end to come in at. So again, this is where I'm going to be getting some, I said professional air quotes, some professional training from some more experienced fighters and pilots out there who are going to teach me these things. There are far too many new players to DCS World who just want to jump in a fighter straight away, get overwhelmed with it, just fly around, shoot bombs, and then leave it. If you really want to get the most from a simulation, then you need to learn the basics, and I'm fully aware I am a fledgling, but I'm open to learn a lot more before I jump out of the nest. As a new pilot in training, I've noticed that 140 feels to me like the aircraft is dropping out of the sky, literally. But you've got to have confidence in the instruments as we come round here. 140 will bring us in on a beautiful glide path, or that's the hope. Landing gear is down and we have got flaps set at 1. Now if our angle of attack here is too much, and I'll show you on the dial, then we need to reduce our speed even more. The angle of attack should be where this white mark is. So if it's too high or too low, you need to reduce your speed, level off, and let gravity bring us down. And a beautiful glide here onto the runway. My angle of attack, you can see, is way off there. But I'm trying to bring this down gradually, slowly, and feather just at the last minute as we put the engines into neutral. Now we're going to go down the runway here using the rudder to steer. I'm going to be tapping the brakes as I put the air brake on, and as we get down to around 30 to 20, I'd say around there, we will then put on wheel steering. Green light is now on the dashboard, which means we have got wheel direction instead of rudder. And I'm just going to gently tap on the brakes as we come down here, even though we've still got the anti-skid on, but you've still got to be careful at speed. And we'll taxi our way back in. So as you can see, I have a lot to learn, but I'm trying to get the fundamentals down. And hopefully, these people who keep offering the training are a little bit like the trainers in VTOL, which taught me a massive amount about that game. And in DCS, I think I probably will stick with this title and try and learn more. And it would be great to know that you guys are appreciating this. And if it has helped to new players, then please do leave a comment and let me know whether you're enjoying this series or where you think I can improve. Obviously, we've just flown the wrong way down the runway, so we deserve to be in jail. But it's all part of the learning process. I don't understand how you know which end of the runway to come into. I don't know about navigation and whether it's a little bit too difficult in this craft because we don't have radar or any of the screens. This is all for me to learn, and all something that we can learn together. I'm certainly enjoying this. I have had a few people mention that the AV101, is it? Another aircraft, a training aircraft, is one of the official planes which may have more functionality and the better ability as a training craft. but the people who reached out to me for training mentioned that this was a brilliant, fantastic plane for new people to get involved in DCS and to dip their toe into what is a massive simulation with the Hornet, which I actually own as well, having 78 different procedures just to get the engine running and ready for taxi. It was just a little bit too much too soon, I think. And we've all seen those amazing videos of the Hornet on the carrier blasting off, and I thought, I want a piece of that. But I think if you're going to approach your simulation with the right mind and get the fundamentals done first. So many acronyms and dials on here that I look at and go, yeah, I kind of get it, but that's not good enough for me. I'm the kind of player who wants to know exactly what each button and dial is, why we're using it, and what it is, because surely that is half the fun in DCS of becoming a real pilot. Hope you enjoyed this series. I will be doing some more on this craft. Who knows, maybe just maybe in the next one, it may be with an instructor. Thanks for watching. Sky high, fly high, and hit that like button. I'll see you in some more videos coming real soon. Bye bye.